Welcome back to your Dream Coach podcast. I'm your host, Shayla Wey. I'm a small business coach, leadership strategist, and someone who truly believes that building a business should help you build a life you love, not take over the one you already have. And on this podcast, we talk about the things that actually help entrepreneurs grow: leadership, fulfillment, and sustainable growth. Because success in business isn't just about revenue. It's about building something meaningful while still having a life outside of it. So let me start today with a question. Have you ever built a business, but it still feels like you're working a job? Your calendar is full, your to-do list never ends, and you're answering messages, solving problems, jumping into projects, fixing things that break. And at the end of the day, you think, why does it still feel like everything depends on me? Well, if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, there's a very good chance you've experienced this before. You started your business because you wanted freedom of time, freedom of income, freedom to build something meaningful. But somewhere along the way, a lot of entrepreneurs realized they didn't build freedom. They built a very demanding job. And here's what I found working with small business owners over the years. Many entrepreneurs leave employment, but they never actually leave the employee mindset. They still think like the person executing the work instead of the person leading the vision. They stay busy doing. But they're not always stepping into leadership. They react instead of directing. They carry everything themselves instead of building systems and leadership around them. And today we're going to talk about why that happens. Because entrepreneurship isn't just about building a business. It's about building a life that aligns with your values, your time, and your purpose. And everything I teach always comes back to these three pillars: leadership, fulfillment, and growth. When entrepreneurs shift how they think about their role inside their business, everything changes. Now, the core shift is the task thinking versus leadership thinking. One of the biggest differences I've found between employees and entrepreneurs comes down to how they think about work. Employees are trained to focus on tasks. What needs to get done today? What's the next assignment? What's on the checklist? Entrepreneurs have to think differently. They have to focus on outcomes. Not just what gets done today, but what moves the business forward long term. Employees ask, what needs to get done? Entrepreneurs are going to ask, what matters most? The shift might sound simple, but it's one of the most important leadership transitions that you can make. Because when entrepreneurs stay stuck in task thinking, their business can only grow to the level of their personal effort. But when they shift into leadership thinking, they start designing systems, building teams, and creating momentum that extends beyond themselves. So I want to walk you through some lessons today to help with this shift. The first lesson is employees execute, entrepreneurs design. One of the biggest shifts I found in entrepreneurship is moving from execution to design. Employees execute tasks, entrepreneurs design how work happens. In the beginning of a business, it's normal to do everything: sales, marketing, customer service, operations, all of it. But if the entrepreneur never shifts out of execution mode, the business becomes limited by one thing: their personal capacity. There are only so many hours in a day. So this idea connects deeply with the E-Myth Revisited, which explains that many entrepreneurs start businesses because they are good at a craft. But building a business requires something different. You're no longer just the technician. You become the architect, and architects design systems. So they ask questions. How does this process work? What repeats consistently? How could this be done more efficiently? When entrepreneurs begin thinking this way, the business stops relying entirely on their effort. And that's where scalability begins. Now, the second lesson is that employees react where entrepreneurs lead. Another pattern I've noticed is the difference between reacting and leading. Employees often operate in reaction mode. They respond to instructions, emails, tasks, and problems. Entrepreneurs must create direction, and leadership requires that clarity. So where are we going? And what matters most this quarter? What are the priorities? And without direction, businesses often drift into activity without progress. Everyone is busy, but the organization isn't moving forward strategically. Entrepreneurs who lead intentionally create alignment, and alignment creates that momentum. The third lesson I found is employees protect time, entrepreneurs protect vision. Employees are trained to manage time. Employees must protect vision. This means protecting something many founders struggle with: thinking time, strategic thinking, planning, reflection. Without thinking time, entrepreneurs become trapped in daily operations. They solve today's problems, but never design tomorrow's strategy. Leadership requires stepping back regularly and asking, where is this business going? And what matters most right now? And what should we stop doing? This is where real leadership thinking happens. Now, the fourth lesson is employees wait for permission. Entrepreneurs create opportunity. Employees are often conditioned to wait for direction. Entrepreneurs must learn to create opportunity. So this means looking at situations differently. Instead of waiting for instructions, entrepreneurs ask, what opportunity exists here? What problem could we solve better? And what could this business become? Opportunity creation is a skill. And the more entrepreneurs practice seeing possibilities, the more innovative their businesses become. Now, lesson number 5 is employees are going to focus on effort. Entrepreneurs focus on impact. Many high performers were rewarded for working hard, putting in long hours, doing more than everyone else. But entrepreneurship eventually requires a shift. Success becomes less about effort and more about impact. Entrepreneurs must prioritize activities that create the greatest results. Now, this idea is reinforced in the book Essentialism, which teaches that progress comes from focusing on what truly matters rather than trying to do everything. Leadership requires choosing what not to do, and that clarity drives growth. Lesson 6 is employees solve problems. Entrepreneurs build systems. Employees fix problems, but entrepreneurs build systems that prevent problems. If a challenge repeats itself in a business, it's no longer just an issue, it's a system gap. So entrepreneurs must ask questions like, why does this keep happening? What process needs improvement? And when systems improve, business becomes smoother, faster, and easier to scale. Lesson 7 is about employees who manage work, where entrepreneurs build leaders. So when entrepreneurs manage everything themselves, the organization becomes dependent on them. But when they build leaders inside the business, growth multiplies. Leadership development increases capacity. And instead of one decision maker, the organization gains many capable thinkers. Developing leaders requires trust and mentorship, but it's one of the most powerful ways businesses expand. Lesson 8 is employees seek stability. Entrepreneurs navigate uncertainty. So employees often seek predictability, where entrepreneurs must learn to navigate uncertainty. Growth requires experimentation, new ideas, calculated risk. Not every decision will be perfect, but entrepreneurs who embrace uncertainty become resilient leaders, and resilience fuels long-term growth. Lesson 9 is all about employees who focus on building careers, where entrepreneurs build impact. Employees often focus on career progression. Entrepreneurs build something larger, a mission, a community, a legacy. So when entrepreneurs reconnect with their impact, decisions become clearer. The work becomes more meaningful, and leadership becomes purpose-driven. And lesson 10 is the CEO mindset creates freedom. The final shift I found is this: entrepreneurs must eventually stop being the primary worker inside the business. They must become the architect of the business. That means designing systems, building leaders, and guiding strategy. And when that happens, businesses become scalable. And scalability creates freedom: time freedom, financial freedom, creative freedom. And that's when the business starts supporting the life you dreamed of building. So if this episode resonated with you and you're building a business but want stronger leadership frameworks, I want to invite you to join the LFG Business Academy on School. It's completely free. Inside, we talk about leadership, fulfillment, growth. And once you're inside, make sure you check out the free mini leadership series where I walk through the leadership principles that help entrepreneurs shift from operator to CEO. If this episode resonated with you, share it with another entrepreneur who's building something meaningful, because entrepreneurship isn't just about building a business, it's about building a life. And remember that your dream life starts with the way that you lead, the way that you live, and the way that you grow. I'll see you next time on the next episode of Your Dream Coach podcast.